Your dead friends died for nothing but pageantry." That's what he barked when he challenged the Royal Guard to a fight. But when they stepped into the ring, the Guard answered for all of them. Want to know what really happened? First, hit that subscribe button and comment below where you're watching from. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Mist clung to the ancient stones of St. James's Palace like a shroud, diffusing the autumn sunlight into a golden haze. The morning quiet was broken by the growl of high-performance engines. 3 Lamborghinis arriving in succession, chrome gleaming as they pulled up to the entrance. From the lead car emerged Danny McCrae, the boxing world's rising star and self-proclaimed Celtic crusher. His muscular frame was wrapped in a designer tracksuit, with a championship belt slung over his shoulder like a trophy. "This is what passes for excitement in London?" Danny's voice carried across the courtyard, his Glasgow accent thick with disdain. "Watching men stand still for hours, and they call fighting barbaric." He adjusted the diamond-studded watch on his wrist, a gift from a sponsor backing his upcoming title shot. The crowd parted as Danny and his entourage moved through, his grizzled head trainer on one side and his promoter on the other, a slick-haired man perpetually checking his phone. Then Danny saw him. Guard Frederick Halberg stood at his post near the east entrance, positioned before a memorial commemorating fallen Guards regiment soldiers. Halberg stood perfectly still, his scarlet tunic immaculate, bearing himself with a dignity that seemed to emanate from somewhere deeper than mere training. "Get this, Mick," Danny called to his trainer, gesturing toward Frederick. "Perfect for the promo we've been talking about. Tickets for Glasgow aren't moving fast enough. We need something to light up social media." Mick Sullivan, a former middleweight contender whose face bore the topography of 100 hard fights, glanced nervously at the palace security personnel. "Danny, this isn't Pittsburgh or Vegas. The Brits take this stuff seriously." "That's the point," the boxing promoter interjected. "We need to show Danny's not just another respectful challenger. The champion responds to disrespect. We need to start the psychological warfare now." The trio approached Frederick's post, trailed by videographers capturing footage. The guard's eyes remained fixed forward, his discipline evident in every line of his posture. Danny began shadow boxing a few feet from Frederick, throwing lightning combinations that had earned him 22 knockouts in 26 professional bouts. "This is a real fighter's stance," he announced, "not this toy soldier nonsense." Behind the bravado lay deeper currents. Growing up in Easterhouse, one of Scotland's most deprived areas, Danny had watched his father return from the shipyards daily, body broken by labour, spirit crushed by superiors. Military and police had been the enemy in his youth, representatives of a system that kept families like his trapped in poverty while others prospered. Boxing had been his escape and his revenge, a way to prove his worth through the ability to dominate another man physically. Each victory was a repudiation of everyone who'd ever looked down on him. "This is hilarious," Danny continued, circling closer to Frederick. "They train you to just take it, don't they? Like proper little servants?" He threw a jab that stopped inches from Frederick's face, testing for any reaction. "In my world, a man defends himself, shows what he's made of." Danny moved with the calculated precision of a predator, his approach now methodical. He'd spotted something in the guard's composure that stirred his fighter's instincts, a potential weakness to exploit with the psychological tactics that had broken opponents before the first bell. "Let me explain something about real combat," Danny said, lowering his voice as he circled behind the guard. "In my world, we don't hide behind rules and formations. It's just 2 men, truth in every punch." Frederick's posture remained perfect, but Danny noted the almost imperceptible tightening of the guard's jaw, a fighter's tell. The boxer smiled, recognizing the signs of a man controlling his reactions through sheer will. "Those shoulders are decent," Danny observed, scanning Frederick's physique. but too stiff, trained for appearance, not function. He moved back into Frederick's line of sight, stretching to display the fluid mobility that had made him infamous for his unpredictable overhand right. Fighting requires freedom. Your kind sacrifices that for conformity, doesn't it? The crowd had grown, expressions ranging from discomfort to fascination. A mother hurried her children away, while others raised phones to capture the scene. Palace security personnel watched from a distance, protocol preventing intervention. The guards were trained to handle harassment without assistance. You know what I think? Danny circled like he would in the ring, cutting off angles, establishing dominance through movement. I think, under that pretty uniform, is just another bloke afraid to step up when it matters. When the ceremony's stripped away, when the rules are gone, what's left? Frederick's breathing remained measured, his eyes forward, but Danny recognized the signs of a man approaching his limits. Like a championship bout, this wasn't about landing the first punches. It was about accumulating damage until the decisive moment presented itself, and Danny McCrae was just getting started. You know what fascinates me? Danny's voice took on a dangerous edge as he sensed Frederick approaching his breaking point. The absolute waste of human potential. He gestured at Frederick's uniform. All that training, all that discipline, for what? To stand here like furniture while tourists take photos? A muscle in Frederick's jaw twitched almost imperceptibly. Danny noticed and pressed his advantage. In the ring, we create something real. Two men testing the limits of human capability. He tapped his chest. Every scar tells a story of facing fear. What stories will you have? I stood very still for very long. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Several tourists stopped filming, sensing the harassment transforming into something uglier. Security personnel moved closer, but remained at their positions, protocols governing their responses. The military sells you all this rubbish about honor and duty, Danny continued, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Pretty words to make you feel better about being pawns. In the ring, there's no lying to yourself. No hiding behind tradition or uniform, just truth in every punch. Frederick's eyes remained forward, but something in them had changed. A deepening, a darkening that hinted at depths carefully controlled. Danny, with a fighter's instinct for weakness, sensed the shift and moved in for what he believed would be the decisive psychological blow. The saddest part? Danny's voice dropped to a near whisper, meant for Frederick alone, though the cameras still captured every word. You lot actually believed the propaganda. Die for it, even. All those mates of yours who came back in boxes from Iraq, Afghanistan, died for what? So tourists can take selfies with Buckingham Palace? For the first time, Frederick's impassive expression faltered, not in any way that would be visible to the casual observer, but to Danny's trained eye. It was like watching a seismograph register the first tremors before an earthquake. The guard's pupils dilated slightly. His breathing pattern shifted. The muscles in his neck tightened beneath his high collar. I hit something there, didn't I? Danny pressed, sensing blood in the water. Those fallen toy soldiers they've got you guarding. What did they die for, really? The same pointless traditions you're standing here defending? Queen and country? He spat the words like they were poison, while the politicians and generals who sent them to die sit in comfort, counting their money. Frederick's eyes, previously fixed on some distant point as regulations demanded, shifted ever so slightly, meeting Danny's gaze for a fraction of a second. In that brief moment, Danny caught a glimpse of something that, despite his bravado, sent a chill down his spine. Behind the disciplined exterior wasn't emptiness or submission, but banked fire, controlled, contained, but burning with an intensity that spoke of depths the boxer hadn't anticipated. Your dead friends died for nothing but pageantry, mate. All this. He gestured at the palace, the ceremony, the tradition. It's just theatre to keep the masses believing in fairy tales while the real world moves on. The crowd gasped at the deliberate cruelty of the words, the direct attack on not just the guard, but on fallen soldiers. Several people called out in protest, their voices rising in defense of Frederick and all he represented, but Frederick himself didn't move, didn't speak, his discipline holding firm even as something dangerous ignited behind his eyes, a controlled fury that seemed to radiate from him despite his perfect stillness. His breathing remained measured, his posture textbook perfect, but the atmosphere around him had changed completely. Danny circled Frederick one final time. He sensed the guard's restraint, stretched to its breaking point, felt the invisible boundary between provocation and consequence thinning. This was the moment every great fighter recognized, when an opponent was perfectly primed for the final, devastating blow. "Tell you what, soldier boy," Danny's voice dropped to a tone that carried absolute confidence. "Let's settle this properly. No uniforms, no ceremonies, no hiding behind tradition." His eyes locked onto Frederick's. "You and me in the ring. 1 round to find out what you're really made of." The crowd fell silent, stunned by the audacity of the challenge. Danny's entourage exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't part of the planned publicity. The promoter stepped forward to intervene, but Danny waved him off, fully committed to something that had become personal. "McCrae Boxing Gym, tomorrow at noon," Danny continued, pulling a folded poster from his jacket, an advertisement for his upcoming title fight. He scribbled an address on the back. 1 round, 3 minutes, just you and me, man to man. He tucked the poster into Frederick's breast pocket. "Unless, of course, you're only brave when following orders." Frederick remained motionless, but the change in his eyes was unmistakable now, something ancient and dangerous staring back from behind the disciplined facade. "Your dead friends would be so proud," Danny said, his voice pitched low, but carrying enough for the closest onlookers to hear. "Hiding behind protocol while someone spits on their memory to your face. Is that what they died for? A colleague who won't even defend their honor? Tomorrow at noon, soldier. Come prove me wrong about what kind of man wears that uniform. Show up for them, if not for yourself." Security personnel were moving with purpose now, their radios crackling as they closed in on the increasingly volatile situation. Danny turned to his entourage with a casual confidence that belied the dangerous game he'd just initiated. "We're done here. Got what we needed." As Danny and his group moved away, he called back over his shoulder, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Noon tomorrow. 1 round to settle whether soldiers are real men or just dress-up dolls. Spread the word." The changing of the guard proceeded at 4 o'clock, the ceremonial exchange executed with flawless discipline. Only Captain Worthington, who had commanded Frederick's unit in Afghanistan, noticed the unusual tension in his soldiers' bearing as he marched away. "Halberg," the captain called quietly. "A word." Frederick followed his commanding officer into a small office dominated by regimental photographs. The captain gestured to a chair, which Frederick declined with a slight shake of his head, standing at parade rest. "Report came through about an incident this morning," Worthington said. "Boxer causing trouble. McCrae, wasn't it? The one with the title shot next month." "Yes, sir," Frederick answered, his voice neutral, betraying nothing of the fire that still burned hours after the confrontation. "Anything I should know about?" "Nothing requiring official attention, sir." The captain nodded. "Very well, dismissed." Frederick saluted and turned to leave, but paused as Worthington spoke again. "Halberg," the captain said quietly, "whatever you're considering, remember that you wear the uniform even when you're not in it." Frederick acknowledged this with the barest inclination of his head, then proceeded to the changing room. With methodical precision, he removed his ceremonial uniform, each piece carefully hung or folded according to regulations. As the scarlet tunic came off, the crumpled poster fell from the pocket. Frederick picked it up, his eyes tracing the scrawled address of McCrae's boxing gym. The locker door revealed his personal effects. A photograph of his unit in Afghanistan was taped inside, 12 men in desert camouflage. 4 of the faces were crossed out with black marker. Next to the photo hung his service medals, including the Military Cross with its inscription, "For Gallantry." On the shelf sat a worn trophy, Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst Heavyweight Boxing Champion, and a smaller plaque, Combined Services Boxing Team 2015 to 2018. Frederick placed the challenge poster next to these mementos, his expression unchanged, but his eyes alive with memory. The boxer's words about his fallen friends echoed in his mind, men he'd carried from battlefields, men who'd bled in his arms. McCrae Boxing Gym occupied a converted warehouse in a gentrifying part of East London, its exterior freshly painted with a mural of Danny's snarling face beneath bold lettering proclaiming "Home of the Next World Champion." Inside, the space hummed with the familiar sounds of a professional training camp, the rhythmic thud of heavy bags, the staccato rattle of speed bags, the squeaking of ring canvas beneath shifting feet. Danny worked the pads with Mick Sullivan, his combinations explosive and precise, sweat gleaming on his torso despite the early hour of their session. Each punch carried the frustration of last night's conversation with his promoter, who'd lectured him about the potential legal consequences of his palace stunt. "He's not coming," Danny grunted between combinations. "Military types, all show, no go." His right cross slammed into Sullivan's pad with enough force to make the veteran trainer wince. When it comes to putting up or shutting up, they always choose shutting up. His entourage lounged around the ring, most scrolling through their phones to gauge the public reaction to yesterday's confrontation. Despite the promoters' concerns, the publicity was everything they'd hoped for. Sports blogs were buzzing, ticket sales had spiked overnight, and even mainstream news outlets had picked up the story of the controversial boxer challenging a Queen's Guard. "Boss," one of them called out, holding up his phone, "you're trending number 3. #Guard Challenge is blowing up." Danny grinned through his mouthguard, throwing another vicious combination. "Told you it would work. Nothing sells tickets like controversy." He checked the clock on the wall, 11:45. 15 minutes until our no-show proves my point about these ceremonial soldiers. The gym door opened, sending a shaft of midday light across the worn floor. Danny paused mid-combination, turning with the others to see who had entered. For a moment, the entire gym fell silent, even the heavy bags ceasing their pendulum swings as hands froze mid-punch. Frederick Halberg stood in the doorway, his civilian clothes, dark jeans and a simple white t-shirt, doing nothing to disguise his military bearing. He carried a small duffel bag and wore the expression of a man arriving for a scheduled appointment, nothing more. No anger, no bravado, no hesitation, just the calm purpose of someone carrying out a decision already made. "Well, I'll be damned," Mick Sullivan muttered, recognition dawning in his eyes. "That's not just any soldier." Danny jumped down from the ring, grabbing a towel to wipe the sweat from his face, his confident smile masking the surprise he felt at seeing the guard actually appear. "Look who decided to show up," he called across the gym. "Didn't think you had it in you, soldier boy." Frederick walked forward with measured steps, his eyes taking in the gym, with the assessment of someone who'd spent time in similar environments. He stopped at a respectful distance from Danny, his voice level when he finally spoke. "I'm here for 1 round, as challenged." The simplicity of the statement, delivered without emotion or embellishment, seemed to catch Danny slightly off balance. He'd expected either no-show or bluster, not this calm certainty. 1 round, Danny repeated, studying Frederick with new interest. 3 minutes to find out if there's anything behind that fancy uniform after all. He gestured toward the ring. "You need to borrow gear, or did you come prepared?" Frederick set his duffel on a nearby bench and began unwrapping hand bindings with methodical precision. Each movement was economical, practiced. the motions of someone who had done this many times before. Danny's trainer approached, caution evident in his stance. "Danny?" "A word," he said quietly, drawing his fighter slightly aside. "I recognize this bloke. Halberg. He boxed for the combined services team a few years back. Heavyweight division. Good record." "Military boxing?" Danny scoffed, though his eyes narrowed as he watched Frederick preparing. "Playing at fighting, you mean? Gentlemen's rules and pulled punches." Mick shook his head. "Not this one. He had a reputation. Very technical, very disciplined." He hesitated, then added, "The kind who doesn't waste energy on showing off. Just gets the job done." Danny dismissed the warning with a wave. Professional versus amateur, no contest. But something in his demeanour had shifted slightly, the focus sharpening, the casual arrogance giving way to professional assessment. "Ring time," Danny announced, sliding between the ropes with the fluid grace that had become his trademark. He bounced on the balls of his feet, warming up his muscles, putting on a show of casual confidence for his watching entourage. Frederick entered from the opposite side, his movements revealing the same economy and discipline he brought to his guard duties. No wasted motion, no performance for the audience, just focused preparation for the task at hand. They met in the centre of the ring, the contrast between them even more striking at close range. Danny all flashy confidence and coiled aggression, Frederick radiating calm purpose and contained power. 3 minutes, Danny said, eyes locked onto Frederick's. "That's all it'll take to prove what real fighting looks like compared to your parade ground nonsense." Frederick simply nodded, his eyes revealing nothing of the thoughts behind them. But as Mick Sullivan moved to the timekeeper's position, raising the bell hammer, something changed in Frederick's stance. A subtle shift that Danny, with his fighter's instinct, immediately recognized. This wasn't a soldier playing at boxing. This was a boxer who happened to be a soldier. And in that moment of recognition, Danny felt the first flicker of doubt about the challenge he'd so confidently issued. The bell rang, sharp and definitive in the suddenly silent gym. Danny launched himself forward the instant the bell rang, leading with a lightning jab-cross combination that had flattened numerous opponents in the first seconds of fights. It was his trademark opener, explosive, intimidating, designed to establish immediate dominance. Frederick slipped the jab with minimal movement and parried the cross with his forearm, his defense so clean it seemed effortless. Rather than retreating, he stepped inside Danny's range, disrupting the boxer's rhythm without throwing a single punch. Surprise flickered across Danny's face, quickly replaced by focused intensity. He reset his stance and unleashed a more measured combination, jab, cross, hook, putting professional power behind each strike. Frederick's defense remained impenetrable. Each movement precise, economical, nothing like the crude blocking Danny had expected. "Fight back, soldier boy," Danny taunted, circling to cut off the ring. "Or is defense all they taught you in the army?" Frederick maintained his position in the center, turning with measured steps to keep Danny in front of him. His eyes never left his opponent, tracking every feint and weight shift with unwavering attention. He hadn't thrown a punch yet, but there was nothing passive about his stance. He was gathering information, learning Danny's patterns. Danny, growing frustrated, launched an aggressive flurry, the combination that had earned him the Celtic Crusher nickname. His fists became a blur of devastating power, hooks and uppercuts thrown with championship-level speed and technique. Frederick weathered the storm with military discipline, his guard tight, his footwork precise. A few punches landed on his shoulders and arms, but nothing clean connected. As Danny's flurry reached its peak intensity, Frederick finally moved, not backward in retreat, but a half step forward into an imperceptible gap in Danny's rhythm. The counter was so fast that many watching didn't see it. A short, precise right hand that slipped between Danny's punches and connected solidly on his cheek. Not thrown with maximum power, but with perfect timing and placement. a professional's punch. Danny staggered slightly, more from surprise than damage. For the first time, real concern showed in his eyes. He retreated, resetting his stance, studying Frederick with new respect. "Lucky shot," he muttered, though the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. With 30 seconds remaining, the difference became clear. Danny was fighting with the desperate energy of a man whose identity was at stake, each punch loaded with emotion. Frederick fought with the cold precision of someone executing a mission. No wasted energy, no emotional investment, just methodical application of force where needed. As Danny launched what he intended to be a finishing combination, Frederick timed his counter perfectly, a devastating right cross that landed flush on Danny's jaw. The punch carried the weight of military discipline, of years of service, of loyalty to fallen comrades, not thrown in anger, but with absolute purpose. Danny crumpled to the canvas, consciousness momentarily deserting him. The gym fell completely silent, the only sound the heavy breathing of Frederick Halberg as he stepped back to a neutral corner, his expression unchanged, waiting for what came next. Mick Sullivan didn't bother counting. He rushed into the ring to check on his fighter, who was already stirring, disbelief flooding his face as awareness returned. The promoter turned ashen, seeing his championship contender laid out just weeks before the biggest payday of their careers. Danny pushed himself to his knees, blood dripping from his nose and mouth, his eyes still unfocused as he stared up at Frederick. The soldier stood calmly, his mission complete, already unwrapping his hand bindings with the same methodical precision he'd applied to putting them on. "Wait," Danny managed, his voice thick through swollen lips. "That's it? We're not even going to talk about what just happened." Frederick finished unwrapping his hands, each binding carefully rolled and placed in his duffel bag with military precision. His expression remained unchanged, neither triumphant nor angry, simply focused on the task at hand. "1 round," Frederick said quietly, zipping the bag closed. "That was the challenge." Danny spat blood onto the canvas, frustration overriding his pain. "You think you've proved something? A lucky punch doesn't—" "It wasn't luck," Mick Sullivan interrupted, his experienced fighter's eye recognizing what his protégé couldn't yet admit. "He outboxed you, Danny. Clean and clinical." Frederick shouldered his bag and turned toward the exit, his movements unhurried, his back straight, with the same disciplined posture he maintained at his guard post. The dismissal was clear. The matter was concluded. The challenge met. No further interaction necessary. "Hey!" Danny called after him, genuine confusion mixing with his wounded pride. "You don't get to just walk away. What was this about? Revenge? Proving a point? Say something!" Frederick paused at the door, turned slightly, not fully facing Danny, just acknowledging the question. When he finally spoke, his voice carried neither triumph nor anger. "Some things don't require explanation," he said. "They just require action." With that, he walked out into the London afternoon, leaving behind a silent gym and a professional fighter, confronting something he'd never expected to face. The humbling realization that the ceremonial uniform he'd mocked contained a man who embodied everything Danny claimed to respect. Discipline, skill, and the quiet confidence that comes from testing oneself in arenas far more consequential than a boxing ring. Outside, Frederick walked toward the underground station, his posture still perfectly straight. To passers-by, he was simply another Londoner going about his business, the capacity for controlled violence, invisible beneath his quiet exterior. In 3 hours, he would resume his post at St. James's Palace, standing guard with the same unwavering discipline he'd displayed in the ring. The incident would never appear in any official report, but among those who had witnessed it, the message had been received with devastating clarity. Some traditions endure not because they're empty pageantry, but because they're built on foundations of substance. Some uniforms represent not costume, but character. What we witnessed today wasn't just a fight between a professional boxer and a royal guard. It was a clash between two fundamentally different understandings of strength. One built on showmanship and spectacle, the other on silent discipline and unwavering dedication. Frederick Halberg didn't need words to defend what he stood for. When challenged, he let his actions speak with a clarity no speech could match. In a world increasingly dominated by those who shout the loudest, there's a powerful reminder here about the quiet strength that often goes unnoticed until tested. The royal guards we see standing sentinel outside palaces aren't just maintaining tradition. They're embodying values that remain as relevant today as they were centuries ago. Discipline, duty, respect, the willingness to stand firm when it matters most. What does true strength look like to you? Is it found in loud proclamations and public displays, or in the silent dignity of those who serve without seeking recognition? Have you ever underestimated someone based on their appearance or profession, only to discover hidden depths you never suspected? If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us about the values worth defending in our modern world. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to stay notified whenever we upload new content. Check out our previous videos about royal guards and the remarkable stories behind the uniform. They should be appearing on your screen right now. And as always, we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time with another brand new Royal Guard story you won't want to miss.